I think they call it, and pinned him. We see a mystery man drinking some beer, getting a Dear John voicemail. His girlfriend's breaking up with him. Reading a story online, apparently about himself, saying Heisman hopeful Preston Vance suffers a career-ending injury. And then he goes to click on joindarkorder.com. And when it goes to that website, and it says, type here why you want to join the Dark Order, the first thing, what I assume Preston Vance types is, I have the whole world in my hands.
Yes.
So I laughed at that one. And then we cut to mystery guy here meeting Brody Lee, the Exalted One. And Brody very politely and calmly, professionally says, thank you for visiting. I know your time is very valuable. I want you to know I understand where you're coming from. I understand your frustrations. Trust me, out of all people, I get it. Now, how tall are you? I have not been a fan of the Vince McMahon parody Brody Lee gimmick, but when he asked this dude, his first question was, how tall exactly are you? Death. I was beside myself. So he asked him height, weight, that kind of thing. Explained to him, we are lions, we eat the prey, you are one of us, you are Dark Order.
Guy actually gave the right answers, too. 6'2"
Apparently.
and 240.
That's a good answers.
Yes.
Which, come to think of it, is what my height and weight was when I wrestled. So everything else went wrong, though. Brody Lee versus Justin Law. Justin Law is the guy who Ty Dillinger, Sean Spears had his very fun match with last week. This was not nearly that much fun. Brody just killed him, won with a discus lariat, and stops to give Marco the stink eye in the front row.
Poor Marco faces Brody next week. Yikes. That will not end well.
They're just reverse booking it. It's the, he's David, and there's a new Goliath every time.
Yeah.
It goes from who was it last time? Archer. Lance Archer was the giant that killed him last time. Now this giant Brody Lee's going to destroy him. There's some woman interviewing the best friends in Orange Cassidy. It was very wacky, as you can imagine. Trent explains that he wants to fight Penelope, which is a strange thing for a babyface to say, but he is not legally able to, so instead he will fight her boyfriend and, for some reason, Jimmy Havoc. And then he looks at the camera, totally deadpan, and says, this is me totally pissed off. And
it's wacky.
It's very wacky. It's very wacky. So next week on AEW Dynamite, Marco Stunt versus Brody Lee.
Yikes.
Cody versus Darby in the first semifinal of the TNT Championship Tournament. And the other semifinal, Lance Archer versus the winner of the Dustin Rhodes Kip Sabian match on this show. We now go to the bubbly bunch. Or actually, the best part of this may have been Jake Hager. But in order, Sammy is doing curls. He tells all his friends, he confesses he has been super down. He really wanted Jake to win that world title and bring it back to the inner circle. Ortiz tells him to focus on the positives. The positives are, if we had been there, it would have been a different story. The positives are, next time they're going to cheat.
Yes. Next time it won't be empty arena.
Yes. Then we go to Jake Hager, who says, Sammy, you're too beautiful to be looking so sad.
He ain't sad at all, by the way.
Jake doesn't care. Jake's an athlete. He suffered a defeat. He's, life
He'll
goes
win
on.
next time on sight.
Because he'll have Ortiz there.
Yes.
Sammy, he says, you're too beautiful to be looking so sad. Sadness is for ugly people, he says.
Frowning is for ugly people, I believe it was.
Either way. So we go to Jericho. Jericho says, I don't want you to be sad either, Sammy. We'll do whatever we do when things don't go our way. Whenever we're feeling down, depressed, or lonely. We're gonna dance! And then Santana says, yeah, let's do a flim flam video. And Jericho determines whoever does the best flim flam video will get this hand sanitizer. So, as we all know, I am old and uncool, but apparently this is the hot new fad. You do a wacky little dance on the TikTok or the flim flam or whatever, and it's just the new fad that's going around right now. So everyone does the exact same dance. It's a couple of dirty bird elbows and some shuffling. And Sammy goes last, and his day is turned around, and by the end, he's not just dancing, he's doing backflips. He's so happy. He clearly wins the Flim Flam Challenge, And then we go back to Jericho, who even as the boss, even though he said he didn't want Sammy to be sad anymore, he's still a very sore loser. And everyone's going crazy for Sammy, and Jericho's jealous. He says, wasn't that good? You're just a show-off. And he puts the phone down and he storms away.
Oh, man, the first tease of dissension was over Flim Flam. Never thought that would happen.
No, I can't say I saw that coming. We get a Jon Moxley hype video wherein Jon Moxley declares, 2020 is my year. You're the one. You're the one guy. We will hear from him next week. Have a Dustin Rhodes hype video. There's nothing these competitors can do to me that I haven't already been through.
By the way, I want to add that it was the greatest dance video I've ever seen. I was busy looking up Flim Flam, and I don't think you're that old, Vinny. I think that they just used that instead of the words TikTok.
Maybe that's it. That's
I can find no evidence that there is such a thing as Flim Flam anywhere on the internet.
I assume that I'm...
Unless it's on the dark web.
I'm slightly younger than Jericho. I'm far older than the rest of these men, and I just assume they know what's going on. And they all have kids. So I assume they know what's going on, and I don't. Anyway, Dustin cuts the generic promo that winning this championship will cement my legacy even further. And Sabian says the TNT championship will give him the fast track to where he belongs. So we got Dustin Rhodes versus Kip Sabian. And Dustin Rhodes, he's an old dog. He's got some new tricks. But he is just going to have an old school wrestling match.
Great.
Here. It had a shine, had a heat. There was a chin lock, so he could get the crowd back into it, even though there's barely anyone there. He makes his comeback. Penelope was interfering the entire match, and finally she got hers. Brandy leveled her with a spear.
Hey, listen. They are going out of their goddamn way to distract those referees when somebody runs in. There's not been one referee seeing interference in a long time. Now, it's kind of ridiculous that two people got in the ring and were doing spots and there were bumps and the ref didn't know they were in there. But you know what? They were watching. Maybe the opponent was screaming in their ear or something.
So Kip is distracted by these women's, and this allows Dustin to catch him with a running Canadian destroyer for the win. So Dustin advances. It was a good TV match, but all I could think was there was not a single solitary second of that entire action where I believe Dustin Rhodes may actually retire on this random-ass Dynamite with a couple of days build via an internet angle.
Well, there's a bigger issue than that, Vinny, and that is that if you wanted to use the retirement of Dustin Rhodes potentially to boost viewership, at the very least you could have announced this last week on national television.
Yeah.
They announced this on social media at like the last second, and actually it wasn't the last second, it was a few days in advance.
A couple days.
But still,
it's have been the last second.
You know, I don't think it meant one thing in terms of viewers. And the other thing is, this is my bigger issue with it. Why was Dustin going to retire if he couldn't beat Kip Sabian? Like, the first thing you think is, fuck, is Kip Sabian that big a fucking geek that, like, if Dustin can't beat him, he's got to retire? I mean, Kip Sabian's in this tournament. Like, in theory, he's supposed to be like a very talented performer. Yep. But Dustin's like, fuck, if I don't beat this guy, I should just hang it up. That's number one. Number two, it's like, okay, so you're going to retire if you don't beat Kip Sabian. Well, next week you got another match in this tournament. It's against Lance Archer. So are you going to retire if you don't beat Lance Archer? Are you going to retire if you don't win this tournament? You're only going to retire if you don't beat Kip Sabian? What about Lance Archer? Like, your thing with Kip Sabian was how badly you wanted the title. But, like, if Lance Archer beats you, you don't get the title either. So it's going to be weird if there's no retirement stipulation if he doesn't beat the Murder Hawk. It's just weird. It felt like the Cody thing where it's just like, why is Cody going to never fight for the world title again if he doesn't win it here? Like, it's the first time ever trying. Both these retirement things have been weird.
That was at least built to.
Well, sure. I mean, that one was better than this one.
I didn't and still don't really understand why they did it with Cody. At least I believed it may happen.
Well, I do know there were people in AEW that were like telling Cody, dude, you don't need to do this. Like,
yeah.
This is an unnecessary added stipulation that then, like, we got to stick to. You know, there were people that were against that. Mm-hmm. And this one here, I mean, I just don't understand. It's like...
It accomplished nothing.
Yeah, it almost makes light of the retirement stipulation.
It does. You can't cry wolf with this too many times.
It's just thrown flippantly around.
And it made this segment, for me, actively worse. because I thought this is a well put together, well paced, well worked wrestling match, but I know what's going to happen at the end, so you're kind of wasting my time. So next week, as previously announced, Cody versus Darby Allin in one semifinal match, Lance Archer versus Dustin Rhodes in the other semifinal match, and just announced Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc versus the Best Friends, no DQ. So there we go. That was Dynamite.
Well, it's time to vote here. And, man, I don't know. Listen, this is what I'm going to do. I mean...
Yes?
Second half of NXT, the second 40 minutes was just so bad. But you know what? The first hour and 20 minutes, I did think, like, there's no way this show can lose. And quite frankly, the second 40 minutes was so bad that there was part of me that thought that it should lose. I enjoyed AEW from start to finish. It wasn't like a blow-away show or anything like that, but there was good wrestling, there were good videos, there was great commentary, good comedy. Like, overall, it was a more solid start-to-finish wrestling show.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to be a fair man, and I did love the first hour and 20 minutes of NXT enough that I'm not giving them a win, because that second 40 minutes was appalling. But I will give both shows a tie this week because of that.
It really is a tough call, because all the best stuff was on NXT. But like you say, AEW was a much better start-to-finish TV show. I was never once bored. It never dragged. Everything went as long as it needed to. But there was nothing as good on AEW as that Drake match. The women's tag match was good. The Kushida match was really good. You know what? I'm not going to overthink this. I liked both shows. I also go tie.
All right, there you go. A tie.
We also watched AEW Dynamite, which was also April 29th, 2020. We had a really long, really cool Darby Allin Cody video because they're meeting tonight in the semifinals of the TNT Championship Tournament. So the whole point of this promo was, I mean, Cody outright says they met at Fyter Fest, and it was a draw, which is as a draw, it was a big win for Darby because it proved he could hang with Cody. And then Cody won the rematch, although as Darby notes, this was after Arn told Cody to get the knees up for the coffin drop, otherwise Darby would have won. So as Darby says, I didn't lose to Cody, I lost to Arn. And Cody says, I never want to lose. A draw is a loss, he says. So they're going back and forth about what they've done and who they are. And Darby says, Cody represents what AEW wants as a champion. He represents suits and ties. And as soon as he said that, I was like, well, I'm cheering for Darby then. As someone who hates wearing a suit and ties, I am cheering for Darby Allin now. Darby says he represents relentlessness, doing anything it takes to get what you want. Who do you want as your champion? A corporate sheep or someone who is relentless? And I've realized what's most important, the beginning of the story, the middle, or the end. And Cody says Darby is a huge part of AEW, but is he a champion? So this is almost, now that I think about this, this is basically Triple H versus Daniel Bryan. the guy who maybe has the
but
talent
Triple
to
H
be
won
champion.
this one.
He did.
Now
Cody is Hunter.
I will say before we get to this that, somebody on our board, it was so disappointed because they were like, well, we all knew it was going to come down to Cody and Lance Archer. It's
Dude,
just
spoiler.
too predictable. And it's like, dude, yeah.
Yes.
That's what should have happened.
That's called good storytelling.
It's called a logical, and you know what? Let's pretend, which it's not, let's pretend it's real, okay? In this fucking tournament, who are the two biggest stars? The two winners of this tournament more than anybody else. It's Cody and Lance Archer. No shit they went to the finals. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love it because it's something I talk about all the time with WWE. They do these tournaments, and it's a bunch of nothing happening, 2-minute matches that we're supposed to care about. It actually, the King of the Ring this year was an exception, so I will put over the King of the Ring. They did a fucking great job in the King of the Ring, especially with Shorty G, Chad Gable in that tournament. It was just awesome. Then they fucked it all up, but that's another story. But if you're going to do a tournament for a new belt, the TNT title, I do not want WWE's Intercontinental title today. I don't want their U.S. title. I don't want a shitty belt where you can't remember who the champion is, and it doesn't matter, and it's just whatever. If this is going to be a secondary title in AEW, this needs to be like New Japan's IWGP Intercontinental title. Mm-hmm. It needs to be a big fucking deal, and big fucking stars need to hold it. And if you want to elevate somebody using the belt, fine, but that's for later down the road.
Yes, you have to establish the belt first.
The two biggest stars in this tournament are Cody and Lance Archer. And both of them are in the finals. And Cody is building up this title like, dude, I can't win this world title. But you know what? I can win this TNT title. He's building it up like it's the most important thing in his life. Now, Lance Archer doesn't give a shit. He's just a killer. Yes. He's a killer who wants to make some money for himself and Jake Roberts, and he's going to go to the end, and they've wanted Cody since day one. So it's an important tournament. The matches have all been good. The two top stars are in the finals. One of them is going to become the champion, and that belt's going to mean something right out of the fucking gate. This is how you do pro wrestling.
So tonight on AEW Dynamite, Lance Archer versus Dustin Rhodes in the main event for one semifinal. Cody versus Darby Allin in the other semifinal. What does the AEW World Champion Jon Moxley have to say?
I'm so glad I waited for that, by the way, because I loved it.
More with the Bubbly Bunch. Shawn Spears in action. Brody Lee versus Marco Stunt. I almost said Keith Lee. Jimmy Havoc and Kip Sabian versus the Best Friends in a no DQ, no countout match. An update on MJF and Wardlow in action. We open with Cody versus Darby Allin in a TNT Championship Tournament semifinal. A very long match. I think it went through 2 commercial breaks. It was a very good match. But the star of the show was once again Chris Jericho. Noting, among Cody's amateur credentials, beyond just being a state champion high school wrestler, he also has a win over Austin Watson in amateur wrestling, which I did not know.
Yeah.
That's a cool story.
I can't remember the exact wording that he used, but it was something like,
If you know
who that means, you know. Yeah. And he didn't bury anybody, but
no, just
we all know.
Yeah. And so the first big spot in this match is Cody dodges a charge, and they're outside the ring, and Darby charges and Cody dodges, and so Darby wipes out Brandy into the guardrail. And first of all, the first thing you hear is Shawn Spears from way over in the corner shouting, "One down, one to go," because Spears hates these roses. And they tend to Brandy. I think QT Martin. No, it's Billy Gunn helped her to the back. They show a replay, and on replay, it does almost appear as if Cody deliberately dodged, knowing where Brandy was, and he almost pushed Darby along into his own wife. To which Jericho is beside himself. What a despicable human being! Just like I told you, Shivani. Basically, every time you can tell whenever Jericho has a great line because he always adds Shivani's name at the end of it. That makes it extra great. So Darby is best known for doing wacky stunts and giant dives. He did this is like a 20-minute match, and 10 minutes of it was Darby doing submission holds.
Well, let me tell you something. Next time Darby's in Seattle, and he's a local guy, I will give him, well, I guess I can't because the school's shut down, but I'll give him a free lesson on how to apply a knee bar, because this knee bar was fucking killing me. He's trying a knee bar, but he's doing it backwards, where the knee's going the way it's supposed to go,
right? Which
is not going to hurt. It's got to go the other way. You're trying to hyperextend the knee, not bend it. And he kept going back to this move. It was driving me nuts.
I like he did some kind of sort of double leg grapevine thing, and Jericho was learning this hurts the knee, the ankle, also the buttocks area.
Yeah, buttocks is a popular word I've noticed in AEW.
Well, it's funny. It's pretty much 100% of the time funny. So after the second commercial break, Brandy returns. She has a bottle of water for Cody. This seems to revive him. They do a bunch of stuff. Both guys kick out of Crossroads. Shawn Spears is just completely marking out for Darby Allin at this point. Cody tries a coffin drop, which is Darby's move, but Darby gets the knees up. And then Darby tries one, and he hits it, but Cody somehow, and I do want to stress somehow, rolls over with it and pins Darby Allin. Now, Cody's arms were up across his chest to protect him from Darby's weight, And then he didn't move those arms to hook, as far as I could tell, either of Darby's arms. So they just kind of fell over.
No, well, what happened, Vinny, was Darby hit the move and hooked a leg.
Okay.
So all Cody had to do was roll.
I see.
And Darby just, he hitchhiking, they call it in jiu-jitsu. He hitchhiked over onto his back, and he's still holding the leg, so he thinks he's covering this guy. But in fact, his shoulders were down, and Cody had fooled him and beaten him.
Now, I thought Darby's left shoulder was easily liftable, and it was not hooked.
Yeah, because he didn't know he was being pinned. He thought he was getting the pin.
I see.
Yes.
I see. Then he's very, very stupid.
Well, he was hooking the leg, and he thought he had it. I like this finish a lot. I got so many emails from people saying, man, everyone's going to hate this finish, but I loved it. But I never got the email from the person that hated it.
Well,
but they are out there.
I'll send you an email right now.
Wow, you hated this finish?
I just couldn't figure out how the hell he was holding him down. And the answer, I guess, was it didn't occur to me.
He
that
held
Darby
himself down.
That Darby Allin would be so dumb.
But it wasn't dumb, Vinny. It wasn't dumb.
He didn't know his own shoulders were down? That's dumb.
Maybe he thought the mat was Cody's body. I don't fucking know. But it was creative. And you know what the key was? Cody barely beat this guy.
That's true.
He barely beat this guy. And spoiler, in the main event, Lance Archer kills Cody's fucking brother. And it wasn't close.
No.
So now, Cody, the babyface, is even more of an underdog because Lance Archer massacred everybody to the finals, and Cody barely beat Darby Allin to go to the finals.
I actually hate that finish even more after discussing it because I thought it was just a sloppy cradle, and I could live with that. But if the idea was Darby was too dumb to kick out...
Oh, my God.
More with Scorpio Sky. This is not as long as the last week's segment, but he hooked up with Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels. They had been a team for a long time. Legends, he called them. And they were looking for a third man for their SCU unit. And he didn't want to just be the third man. He wanted to, carry his own weight in this deal. And they all hooked up together, and it didn't click until they went on Being the Elite. And he talked about being in the worst town he's ever been in. And that became a whole thing. And he says he wants to be great, and he wants to be a legend. We have an update from MJF.
I thought this was way better than last week.
I loved them both. He's at Max's Rats Estate in Massapequa, New York. He has rehabbed his horrible injury, he says. He went from death's door to overhealing his hangnail. He now has the strongest nail in the world.
You know, this business is different because back in the day, the rats definitely did not live in estates.
Well, if MJF doesn't deal with those rats, Brian.
I see.
MJF's rats have estates.
Huh.
He couldn't wait to get back to Dynamite, he says. He tried to get TV ready, but while he was shaving, he nicked his neck. He's been wearing a scarf, and he removes the scarf to reveal a big, giant neck brace to cover up the nick on his neck from shaving. He says a normal man would have bled out and died, but I am a warrior. And I was going to be so happy to hop on a germ-infested plane and fly down there to wrestle before 6 or 7 of my peers who I respect so much. But I will be back, not just for you, but for me, because I am the only hope this company has left. Because I'm MJF, I'm better than you, and you know it. Musa versus Wardlow.
This didn't go well for Musa.
No. Jericho's great line here was talking about how good-looking and muscular Wardlow is. He could be on the cover of Big Muscle GQ, Tony.
I like when he's... Go ahead.
I know you need a job, Musa, but you're going to do a job is what's going to happen.
Yes, that was my favorite. And he did do a job to the F10.
He did the F10, and before that, there's a move where Wardlow manhandles Musa up, so he's standing on the middle rope, and he's holding Musa up by the throat. He drops him, and Musa falls, and Wardlow catches him coming down with a knee to the face. That's an awesome move. So yes, a complete squash and an effective one. It is time for the Bubbly Bunch.
So the greatest thing. I have friends that are in WWE who are not fans of AEW, and even those people were texting me saying, this is the fucking greatest thing. This was so good that I just watched it thinking, you just got to end the Bubbly Bunch, dude. Like, it's got to be over. I mean, you may as well just shut down wrestling because we've peaked, and I'm not sure where there is to go from here.
So we begin. Jericho is getting a home workout in. But of course, he's Le Champion. So he's doing his workout in... He's fully dressed. He has like nice pants on.
He's in his concert gear.
He's
got like leather pants on and a jacket.
Sunglasses, gloves, and he's pedaling on his stationary bike and talking to his friends on the phone. So they talk about last week's Flim Flam Challenge. There's still some debate about who actually won. Finally, they agree to disagree. And Jericho says, listen, nobody in AEW can kick our asses anyway. We should all fight each other and have a Manitoba melee. So, I'd be lying if I said it was the first one of these I'd seen, but I believe it may have been the best one of these I've seen. So what it is everyone, I believe it started with Ortiz. Ortiz looks into the camera and punches it like so.
He headbutts the phone.
Excuse me, he headbutted it like so. I cannot headbutt from where I am here, so... Then it goes to, I think from there went to Hager, who sells the headbutt.
I've got the whole thing written down.
Okay, go ahead there.
So Sammy wants to start the fight, but Ortiz headbutts the phone, and Sammy goes flying. So he gets up, he punches his phone, and that sends Jake Hager flying.
Yes.
Jake Hager kicks the phone, which sends Santana flying. Santana hits the camera with his shoe, and the librarian Peter Avalon goes flying. Peter Avalon then sends Jungle Boy onto a vine over a lake. Yeah. He swings back.
Complete with a Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan roar.
Yes. And then Jungle Boy hits Sonny Kiss.
Yes.
Who kicks Dr. Luther.
Yes.
Who kicks Chris Jericho's father, Ted Irvine.
Hockey legend, yes.
Who grabs a fucking hockey stick, and he swings it, and this is where I lost it. He hits Lou Ferrigno. Now, at the end of the video, Chris Jericho says, was that Lou Ferrigno or something like that? He has some...
Was that Lou Ferrigno with a taser?
Yes.
Because
I said the exact same words when I saw Lou Ferrigno. It was Lou Ferrigno with a fucking taser.
You all can Google Lou Ferrigno if you want, if you don't know who it is. Lou Ferrigno sells the hockey stick shot from
He's the Incredible Hulk from the 70s.
He begins to get very angry.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, are they going to run in and like spray paint him green or something? But no, he holds up a goddamn taser like he's the Mountie now, and he zaps the phone, and the person he zaps, Seattle's own Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses.
Yes.
There's a couple people in here I didn't know.
Okay, so the rest of the list.
Okay.
It was Jay from Jay and Silent Bob.
I knew him.
It was Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith, who is Silent Bob, and when it comes to Silent Bob, the music stops because it's silent.
Gabriel Iglesias.
The fluffy guy.
Ryan Nymiller.
Okay.
Brad Williams.
I don't know who they are.
Okay, James Garrettson, who was the guy who I believe turned informant on the Tiger King.
Oh, okay.
Virgil.
Yes.
And finally, Vicky Guerrero.
Of course. And...
She starts screaming.
Yes,
and Jericho can take no more.
Jericho waves it off. That's it. That's enough. That's one of the best Manitoba melees I've ever been a part of.
It was definitely the best.
And then he asked, was that Lou Ferrigno with a taser?
I love this with all my heart.
I can just imagine they probably Jericho. Somebody saw the stuntman challenge going around and said, dude, we got to do this. And Jericho just hit every contact in his phone and said, do me a favor.
I suspect this wasn't every contact in his phone, but it was a great lineup that all participated.
Yeah.
And like Lou Ferrigno is still the one that I just can't even believe. I can't even believe it, but he was there.
Yes.
It was awesome.
This was fantastic.
I laughed so hard watching this because I had not seen the Stuntman Challenge. I learned about it later. So as soon as Ortiz headbutts the phone and Sammy goes flying, I lost it.
Yes.
On the very first one. And then, it's funny for like 4 or 5, but right when it's about to get old, then all of a sudden, you've got fucking Jungle Boy on the vine.
Yes.
And then Lou Ferrigno.
With the Tarzan roar.
I'm like, Jesus, God almighty. Yes. And of course, the main event, Virgil.
And the main event, Superstar Virgil. Jimmy Havoc and Kip Sabian versus Best Friends. If you liked garbage wrestling matches from the Attitude Era, boy, have I got a match for you.
Oh, but this was way more fun.
I guess.
I enjoyed it.
They hit each other with shit a lot. I just like this. There's like 85 weapons in the ring. There's chairs and trash can lids and probably a guardrail or two and a ladder, an actual ladder in the ring. They're still doing tags in and out for some reason.
Do you know why? Actually, they weren't doing tags. They
were.
They got in the apron for a second, but then they just got in there and started brawling with each other. I
promise you there were tags in this match.
Well, there weren't many then. The reason this is better than the Attitude Era stuff was I didn't see one tag, by the way. I'll go back and watch it. But the reason this was better than the Attitude Era stuff was, at least in this match, it was like they came up with an idea for a story of the match involving Orange Cassidy and Orange coming back and Penelope and everything else. At least there was like thought put into this crazy match. Whereas these fucking matches with like Raven and the Big Show, it's like they go, you got 3 minutes. And so they just fucking go out there and hit each other with stuff for 3 minutes, and they do their shitty finish. And there's like no story to it. There's no twists and turns. There's nothing. It's just hit each other with shit for the time we're allotted. This at least felt like they were trying to tell a story.
There was some stuff where they would set up a ladder and tease going into it and stuff there, so there was some suspense to it, I guess. My favorite part is Jimmy Havoc begins to set up chairs, and I don't know who said this, but somebody outside the ring shouts at the top of their lungs, "Lego Master Jimmy Havoc!"
Dude, it's so awesome. Much better with wrestlers out there. It's so much better.
Because wrestlers, as a general rule, are smartasses.
And they love wrestling.
And they love shouting funny things. So, eventually, Penelope's involved, Orange Cassidy's involved. Jericho's great line here was, Orange did something to Penelope. I don't even remember what. He threw a chair at somebody after Jimmy Havoc had thrown a chair right in his face. And I don't know if Orange did this on purpose, but it was a very soft chair toss. And Jericho points out, not a lot of force. He's too lazy to throw it hard.
I think that was the story.
That may have been the story. So then he does a totally out of control dive, Orange does, onto Sabian on the floor, and Chuck pins Havoc with an awful waffle onto chairs. And there you go. They won the street fight. Or the no DQ, no countout match, whatever you want to call it. We have a visit to Dr. Britt Baker's office. So, first of all, they go to her legit dentist office. I don't know if this decor is permanent, but there's pictures of her in her wrestling gear all over the place.
I can only hope it's permanent.
I can only hope. There will get some return customers there. So she's there getting her makeup done by...
At the very least, she should have one.
Just one. One. She's there getting her makeup done by Reba. Or Britt says, Reba's here. She always makes me look my best. And then we have a side segment with Reba. It's just, actually, my name is Rebel. And she's talking about how going through this, and
you know who this is?
I have a guess, but why don't you tell me?
It's Rebel from TNA.
That's who I thought it was. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Well, there you go. She's still in the business then.
Yes.
So, anyway, she's talking about Britt, and Britt is walking by in the background and does a double take and realizes Rebel is not doing the speech they had prepared. And so she pulls Reba aside, lays it down. This is going to be your big break. I need you to do it like we discussed. And suddenly, Rebel has changed her tune. She's such an inspiring role model. It's so incredible to work with her. It's a privilege to do her makeup. So then we move from there into Britt's office. And as Britt is walking in, there's a chair in the way. She says, damn it, Reba, move that chair. And you can't even see Reba. There's like Rebel. There's a big lighting thing in the way. But you just see her hand come in and go to the chair and go, smack, and take the chair away. She's disgusted with this behavior of Britt Baker. So Britt explains to everyone on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, even the old folks on the Facebooks, it's time for another tip on being a role model. This week's tip is, not everyone can be a role model. Some people cannot be a role model. For example, glasses wearers. And she shows a picture of Tony Schiavone in his glasses. Now, unless you're a doctor, because Britt herself was wearing glasses at this point, don't wear glasses. Rule number 2, no fat people. And they cut to a shot of Tony Schiavone, and his waistline has been enhanced graphically. He's very huge. And her third group of people who cannot be role models is no snaggletooths.
Well, she points out if you're fat, you need to use Photoshop, and they have a Photoshop of Tony's gut vanishing.
It did, man, and texturing and filters and all that kind of stuff. Her third rule was no snaggletooths. If you don't have good teeth, don't smile, she says.
Actually, that's the fourth one. The third one was no wannabes, but she didn't explain that one.
That's true. That was on the
I guess that was on the chopping room floor.
I guess. All I know is Britt Baker is an epic bully.
Oh, she's the greatest.
She's a fantastic
Absolute greatest. The shot of Rebel doing her speech and you see Britt peeking her head out. It was so good.
Yes.
This was awesome. This was way better than the fucking dating game.
Yes. That's for sure. That's for sure. Sean Spears versus an unnamed geek.
Baron Black.
It's eventually learned that his name is Baron Black, and before I could even write down the 36 comic book jokes into my head, Chris Jericho overwhelms me with death metal jokes, which also apply. So, Tony is beside himself in this video. I'm not snaggletooth, he says, and I've lost weight. I'll need to talk to Britt about that. So, Baron Black did a wacky headlock takeover where, like, he trapped Spears' arm and then fell on him at the same time. And they did some stuff, and Spears won with a DVD and a sharpshooter.
So it wasn't as good as Sean Spears won a couple of weeks ago, but it was the same story where he's all cocky, guy gets a couple of spots, and then he beats him. So at some point, somebody, I thought yesterday maybe Marco, but like somebody's going to upset Sean Spears at some point.
Sure. And maybe that'll be the guy who ends up teaming with him.
Could be, yeah. I don't know if they're still doing that or not. It got dropped when coronavirus hit.
Well, there's that. That's true. We never saw those videos. Oh, we had like 1 week of videos. That's right. So, Technique by Taz. So, the first one they did these, it was somebody doing a suplex. Oh, it was Jake Hager. And they're talking about different kind of gable grips he's got and all this stuff. And the next week, it's Kenny Omega's V-trigger. And they're breaking down precise striking technique and weight transfer and all this stuff. Here, the Technique by Taz is Lance Archer's blackout. And the technique is be real tall, be real strong, lift him up and slam him down.
Hey, that's how you do it.
I mean, it works. I'm not arguing with what works. But there just wasn't as much to this one. He didn't have as much to work with as he does with a lot of these segments. AEW has a woman who does interviews. Does she have a name? Like, I couldn't even I guess who this interview woman was.
I forget who this was.
She's interviewing Marco Stunt. Now, her question, I don't know her name, but she asked a great question. Lance Archer nearly killed you, she says, and now you're facing Brody Lee. How much can you take?
Well, that's a goddamn good question.
Yes. And Marco, whose voice sounds even younger than he looks. A lot of people feel he doesn't belong, he says. My teammates aren't allowed to be here, so I'm stepping up to the plate. I got a job to do. I'm going to give it my all like I always do. How much can I take? A lot more than that. So it's Marco Stunt versus Brody Lee. Marco did, in fact, give it his all. It is not enough. He was nearly counted out, barely able to get back in the ring, made a little comeback, but tried something off the ropes and got black hole slammed and then powerbombed, and Brody wins. I believe Baron Black got more offense against Sean Spears than Marco Stunt got against Brody Lee.
That's very possible, but it is Marco Stunt versus Brody Lee.
Yeah.
You ain't going to get much more than you got.
He gave it all he had. So John Moxley's out in the desert somewhere.
Oh, this was the greatest.
You know, he says, 8 weeks ago, I was celebrating World Championship. I was out amongst the people. I was bleeding, sweating. They're all right there with me.
High five in a sea of fans.
High five in a sea of fans.
It was like a lifetime ago. What happened?
And then he cuts to him, and he's just alone in the desert looking around. Says, well, tough times don't last forever. One day, I'll be sweating and bleeding in the crowd again.
One day, he says, we'll all be back together, and I will be bleeding and swearing in a sea of fans once again. He said swearing the second time.
I did. I think I mistyped it. I think sweating is a typo. Although he was sweating in the crowd. In the meantime, he says, I'm thankful for old number 7. I'm thankful for my wife, who has to put up being quarantined with me.
God knows it takes a hell of a woman to be stuck at home with me for weeks on end. The amount of wrestling she's got to be watching right now.
Yes. Steel chairs, because a DDT on the steel chairs is more effective. I guess they didn't teach you that at Oklahoma University, Jake Hager. And I'm very thankful that AEW is live next week. So I'm going to throw the dogs in the truck. I'm going to throw Big Platinum in the truck, and he pats the belt. I'm going to throw a few bottles in the truck and a few Metallica CDs in the truck. I'm going to head east. Until then, be nice to your neighbor. Support your local businesses, order takeout, and listen to me, don't forget to call your grandmother.
He shouted it, call your grandmother.
Yes.
I thought we do every week.
I was going to say, it's like he's watching our show.
Yes, fear not. I will call Granny on Sunday. Actually, I got a remote that's even better.
That's true.
It's like we're right there.
Next week on Dynamite, MJF returns. Kazarian versus Jon Moxley, the AEW World Champion. And Kenny Omega and Matt Hardy will team up to face Les Sex Gods, Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho in a street fight. The main event, Lance Archer versus Dustin Rhodes in a TNT Championship Tournament semifinal. Okay, I'm going to get one negative out of the way. I am over the gimmick where Lance Archer comes out and is beating up a random person.
Well, too bad. It's going to keep happening.
It's as dumb as abductions in the NXT parking lot that are never followed up on.
Well, not quite.
He's assaulting people every week.
Well, yeah.
And there's no crime
He's
here.
the Death Archer or whatever. What's his gimmick? The Death something?
Murder Hawk
Murder
Monster.
Hawk, that's right. So I got to say a couple things. There's someone on our board that was like, I'm always surprised by Dustin. And I'm like, why?
It's been 30 years.
Fuck, dude. This guy is fucking great.
Yes.
And the match was like, it was every simple match where at the beginning he tries to power slam but it doesn't work, and then of course he makes his comeback and he hits it.
Archer had him scouted.
I mean,
the dropping punch and the power slam both got blocked.
It was all very basic, old school psychology.
Yes, that's why it works.
Some new style stuff put in there, like Archer's rope walk into a moonsault.
That was new.
But fucking Dustin is he's great. You forget how big he is, so you see him and he's almost the same size as Lance Archer.
He's huge, yes.
He's just gigantic.
He just doesn't wrestle like a big person.
But I thought that it was a very, very good match.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that the finish was just the greatest because it leaves so many things open.
So many doors are opened here. So many questions to be answered. And every answer they could come up with these questions will make sense. So, story is, of course, Archer's just whipping his ass for most of this match. And at one point, Dustin is hit with a chair and he begins to bleed. And here's where it really became a Dustin Rhodes old school wrestling match. Because for like 10 straight minutes, he just bled and sold. And it was awesome. Eventually, he makes this comeback. And Jericho is struggling. He says, like, he's coming straight at her. And his mind goes blank. He can't think of any cities in Texas. And so, like, a minute passes, and now, of course, he's thought of 20 cities in Texas. He must get them all in. So the big spot here is Dustin hits Crossroads, Cody's finish, and Lance Archer kicks out at 1. Not even 2, 1. He's invulnerable to the Crossroads. So the match continues. Lance Archer does do a rope walk moonsault, which is ridiculously impressive. So at some point, a turnbuckle pad is ripped off, and Dustin, who was already bleeding for several minutes, goes into the exposed buckle, and he goes down, and now he's in really bad shape. And Archer's pounding him, and pounding him, and pounding him, and pounding him. And QT Marshall suddenly runs out with a towel in his hand. And he is talking to Dustin, and basically asking, do you want me to throw in the towel? But before Dustin can answer, Cody runs up, yanks the towel out of his hand. So Cody's got the towel. Cody turns to Dustin, but then before, they're like talking, but who knows about what. And Archer is out of patience now. He grabs Dustin, drags Dustin back in the ring. Dustin now has the towel. So Cody can't throw it in. So Archer grabs Dustin by the head, slams his head into the mat over and over again like a basketball, puts him in an iron claw, and I believe it was a pinfall finish after that.
Yes, he pinned him with the claw.
And as soon as the match was over, the finish was official, Marshall and Cody and Brandy hit the ring, and Archer backs away because he's no fool. But yes, the question is, what was Dustin trying to do? Would he have thrown in the towel? Was he trying to screw his brother? Was he trying to set his brother up?
What's Cody trying to do?
What did I say?
Dustin.
Was Cody, you're correct, thank you. Was Cody trying to screw his brother? Was Cody trying to save his brother? Was Cody just trying to do what his brother wanted? What's Dustin going to think about all this? What's QT going to think about all this? It's a complex web that has been woven here, but it's all completely realistic and believable. The match itself was such a good TV main event, man. Dustin Rhodes. Dude, we used to have, when I was a kid, we'd have conversations like, who was the best wrestler who was never world champion? And Roddy Piper was always like a good answer. But there was 100 good answers because not everyone got to be world champion. And after about 2000, that question was much, much harder to answer. But goddamn, Dustin Rhodes has never been world champion, but he is so good.
Well, There's still time.
There's still time.
I don't know if it's going to happen, but...
I would not put money on it, but hey, stranger things have happened.
Yeah, he's awesome. This is great.
So, there you go.
Time to vote.
Time to vote. I thought these were, on the whole, 2 fun shows. I liked AEW more, but this is a 10-9 round. This is 2 good shows that I liked. I just happen to like AEW more, mainly because of the 2 tournament matches.
Yeah, I'm going to give the vote to AEW. I mean, it was also close, but I mean, if you want a tiebreaker and it's like the fucking, what do they call it? The Newly Bro show versus the Bubbly Bunch. I mean, then it's a 10.
Well,
then it's a 10-8 round.
Yeah,
but yeah, I did like NXT a lot, but AEW, the tournament matches were great. I liked the finish of the first one a lot more than you did. It had the Bubbly Bunch. And I enjoyed the no-holds-barred match as well. And Britt Baker's thing was great. So they're getting the win here tonight from me. So AEW gets my vote. But two good shows.